Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to all of you. I've seen a really nice uptick in people subscribing and rating and reviewing the show. Continue to do that. If you have not done so already, there's a like button down here. If you're watching this on YouTube, all you got to do is hit the thumbs up. Also, hit that bell notification icon. It'll notify you every time a new episode drops. And be a part of the group. It's a really, really fun community we're building here. And as always, thank you for all the support there. All right. Saw this yesterday as the NBA Combine was playing out that the EuroLeague, which is considered to be the best league outside of the NBA in basketball, it's essentially like the NBA light because a lot of guys who have played in the NBA may not be rotation pieces in the NBA. Some of them go overseas and they play in the EuroLeague and they do very, very good things. Now, Jonathan Givony and other reporters out there said that players under contract with international teams cannot just get up and leave for college without permission. As they mentioned, we have seen schools pay buyouts to clubs this offseason and last. Young players often make up to 10 times or more in college via NIL after leaving Europe. Well, that brought up an interesting thing because the NCAA and the Central Board of the EuroLeague have essentially come to an agreement that is going to allow them to streamline the process of getting young talent from the EuroLeague. And we all know what happened with Jagger Deming. BYU did have to pay a buyout to get him away from Real Madrid to come to play at BYU. They're going to streamline it and treat it essentially as if the NCAA and college basketball were another fledgling professional league, which, let's be honest, it's become that. But there was an added note to this from Jonathan Givony said this: European teams should do a better job of making it attractive for young players to stay home if they're that concerned about the buyouts and that type of stuff. As he mentions here, Hugo Gonzalez left over $1 million on the table from BYU, but can barely get off the bench some games for Real Madrid. As he mentions, pretty clear Egor Demin made the right decision to leave, unquote. It's actually a really good point because some people, when I retweeted this, use the eyeball emoji to kind of point out what was going on. Hugo Gonzalez is a guy who's going to be battling for maybe back half of the first round, maybe early second round consideration in this year's NBA draft. Well, Jagger Deming, he is shining at the NBA Combine. We talked about it yesterday. If you're an everydayer, we talked about the fact that he's shooting it extremely well. The buzz continues to kind of grow and grow and grow. I saw multiple tweets from guys like Brett Siegel, Mike Babcock. There's a lot of people out there who are buying in and hearing the NBA teams are buying into Jagger Deming with his performance in Chicago this week. That is why I think the point here about Hugo Gonzalez is very curious because BYU did kick the tires on him when they were also trying to get Jagger Deming to BYU. What I was told is there were some contractual deals with the Hugo Gonzalez deal that prohibited, I guess, prohibit is probably the strong term, but made it essentially unwieldy for BYU to try and get Hugo in addition to Egor. So BYU essentially turned all their attention on getting Egor to BYU. And as Jonathan Givony, who does a great job covering the draft for ESPN, points out, Hugo Gonzalez, him bypassing or not being able to take BYU up on whatever offer they offered him, over $1 million. Okay, I can tell you this much. I am never going to pass up on $1 million. And now I work in a different stratosphere than professional athletes. They live in fairy tale land for the layman, like most of you and myself out there. $1 million for us is life-changing money. For them, $1 million, it's okay. Well, I'll get that on my next contract times 15. The bigger point is, a guy like Hugo Gonzalez, wouldn't he have benefited from playing a lot more in college basketball, potentially for a program like BYU, than, as Jonathan Givony points out, where he can barely get off the bench in certain games with a lot of veteran star players with a Real Madrid team that's one of the really OGs of the EuroLeague. They competed at a very high level and are regularly contending for EuroLeague supremacy. And they're not going to be like, hey, you know what? We're going to cost ourselves a chance to win the EuroLeague title to play this young talent. You got to prove yourself. And a guy like Jagger Deming, he did prove himself over in Europe, but then when he came to BYU, took on a bigger role. And once again, now he's absolutely thriving and likely to be, I think, off the board by the end of the lottery, 14 picks into this NBA draft. Everything screams to me that he has made good on the bet on deciding to leave BYU. I can tell you Patrick Kinahan had a guy tell him that Jaeger's leaving because he's going to be picked somewhere between 5 and 15. Well, I have had some contacts with people who have a better idea on where things stand for a guy like Jaeger Demin, and that 5 to 15 area is exactly where everybody's pegging him right now. Now, 5 could be the Utah Jazz, I'm just saying, but I'm also not expecting that. I think the Utah Jazz have other needs that they're trying to address with that 5th pick. But the nice part is Jaeger Demin shined and has absolutely upped his stock and up the overall amount of money he's going to make. Whereas a guy like Hugo Gonzalez not only bypassed $1 million in terms of NIL and the like to come and play for BYU, and also potentially could see himself slide down. It's already has slid down the draft charts, the projections, because of the fact he's not played as much this year over in Europe. So I mentioned how did Kevin Young crack the code? Well, the EuroLeague is going to try and revamp this, is what it sounds like. There are reports out there. As I mentioned, they're going to try and treat the NCAA like a fellow professional league. Well, hopefully it'll kind of be streamlining the process of if BYU or another program wants to bring a young talent from a EuroLeague franchise over to the United States, they pay, I guess, what you'd call in, European soccer, a transfer fee across the world to get guys from one league to another. You play a transfer fee. It's a buyout, was what a lot of people call it in basketball. Did Kevin Young essentially, as I mentioned, crack the code and completely change the game once again with what he did to get Egor Demin over to the United States? I can't say it's just a guy like Kevin doing it, because I know there's the Jacques Jonas kid from Illinois who came over as well, but they're causing the EuroLeague to fret a little bit about losing all their young talent because, as Jonathan Givony points out, guys can come over as young talents that are still college eligible and make, as he mentions, 10 times the amount of money they'd be making playing for those EuroLeague teams. That's going to deplete the talent if the EuroLeague doesn't change their philosophy and their overall pay structure, because their young talent is going to flee across a pond, as the Brits say, to the United States to play college ball and make a bunch of money while they're doing it. And in theory, get more opportunities to shine on a bigger stage. And, oh, by the way, potentially jump to the NBA instead of sticking in the EuroLeague, where you'd like to keep them at home and playing for your franchises if you're one of those EuroLeague franchise owners. It's a very interesting dynamic here. And Kevin Young, he may have gotten ahead of the curve on this, but also at the same time may have helped streamline the process where he can bring more talent to BYU and continue to build up this roster and make BYU even more formidable than they already appear to be going into the next season and the foreseeable future. Very, very interesting times, and crazy to think that a guy like Hugo Gonzalez potentially passed up on $1 million and probably an outsized role at BYU, only to see himself glued to the bench in multiple instances in the EuroLeague. Decisions have consequences. Hindsight's 2020 and all that, but I wish Hugo the best as he makes hopefully good on his bet on himself in the NBA. But it's very clear that Jaeger Deming, as Jonathan Givony pointed out, he made the best decision of the duo there to come over and play stateside. All right, we'll finish up today's show with our weekly Q&A. Our insiders group lobbied their questions at me. We will address as many of them in the time remaining right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.